All right, so I am extremely excited to be with you guys again today, this year, with Miss Meg McHutchison. Meg is our Program Integrity Director, and she leads our Enrollments Division. And she really does a great job leading our enrollment staff. And I really think she's appropriately titled Program Integrity Director because the Enrollments Division does such a good job of keeping our enrollments intact, making sure everyone who should be enrolled is enrolled, and those who shouldn't be enrolled. And so, Meg, I'm really excited about being here with you today, and I think you've got some team members here with you that you wanted to introduce.
That's right, we do. First, thank you all for being here. I know that being a unit administrator is just part of most of your jobs, so thank you for taking the time to be here. We hope that we make it worth your while.
So, we're going to go over our enrollment rules, as many of you already know. But I always like to know, how many of you are here for the first time? This is your first conference. Okay, good. So you're one of the reasons we do this every year, because we think it's such a valuable, important part of the conference to go over our enrollment rules, because those are things that you guys deal with on a daily basis. So we're going to dive into our rules. We're going to cover as much as we can in the next 30 minutes. And you'll notice also we have 2 empty chairs here. That's because we have 2 special guests that we're going to bring up during our presentation that we're really excited for you guys to meet. So, Meg, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with a baseline question. What is a full-time employee, eligible full-time employee under our plan?
Okay, a full-time employee is an employee who receives a W-2, is in an employee-employer relationship, and regularly works 30 or more hours per week.
All right, so the key there, guys, is the 30-hour rule, right? 30 or more hours. You may have a different time period for your full-time employees, and that's okay. You just need to remember for insurance purposes, it's 30 hours. And how many of you have more than 50 employees? Okay, hopefully you're familiar with the ACA rules, but if not, know that, typically under our plan, if you have a temporary or a part-time or a seasonal or intermittent emergency worker that may, just be a small, short term, they're not eligible. However, if you have more than 50 employees, it's very important that you're tracking their hours because they could be eligible under the ACA rules. And so you need to track their hours. There's a measurement period in which you're measuring their hours. Then you have the stability period and the administrative period. And there's a lot that goes into that. I've got a whole set of slides that I'll be glad to share with you. If you'll come see me afterwards, we have a QR code that you can scan. We'll email those to you, and there's a lot of good information on that. But just make sure that you're aware of those provisions. All right, so what about those, for those of our units that cover elected official? What is an elected official under our plan?
An elected official is an individual elected to public office by the vote of the people at the state, county, or municipal level.
All right, and that's the key, right? This has got to be the vote of the people. You may have some waterworks board members or some other appointed positions. They wouldn't classify as an elected official under our plan. So just keep that in mind. And for those of you who do not cover elected officials currently, don't worry. You can make that change during open enrollment if you decide to do so. All right, so let's talk about the enrollment process. Walk us through that process.
Okay, your unit has chosen an effective date of coverage for your employees, which is either date of hire or first day of the second month. And within 30 days of being hired, your employee needs to either enroll in the plan or decline with proof of other acceptable coverage.
In that 30-day time period, would that apply to someone who's part-time, less than 30 hours, moving to more than 30 hours?
That's correct. Always we want the information as soon as possible, but no later than 30 days.
And you mentioned when someone's declining, they have to provide acceptable proof. What does that include?
That's right. Okay, so we've got a chart up here that shows what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And what we're looking for here is the type of coverage, the date it became effective, and if the insurance is still in effect.
And the key there, guys, is we're looking for something that shows current coverage. You can see where an insurance card, it just shows that you had coverage at a point in time. It doesn't necessarily say that it's still active. So that's why we need something with a current date on it.
Okay. Next, we will talk about the employee transfer process. Chris, can you tell us how that works?
I can. How many of you guys are familiar with transfer employees under our plan? Yeah, it's a little bit different. So what happens is you've got an employee who transfers from one unit to another during the same calendar month. And so in that scenario, their coverage would continue through their first unit through the end of the month. And then their coverage with their second unit would begin based on that unit's effective date criteria, with the exception of those date of hire units, right? You could see where that could cause a problem because their coverage through their first unit hasn't ended yet. So in that scenario, their coverage would begin on the first day of the next month. So coverage ends on unit A, end of month, unit B kicks in the first day of the next month. And I think we've got some good examples to show that. Meg, you want to talk about those?
We do. They're a little lengthy, but we're going to go over them. The example for units with a date of hire effective date. John is covered under Unit A and terminates his employment on August 14th to begin a new job with Unit B on August 15th. Unit B offers coverage on the date of hire. In this scenario, John will have coverage through the end of August under Unit A, and his new coverage through Unit B will begin on September 1st. Now, an example for units with a first day of second month effective date. Okay, same facts. The employee terminates on August 14th to begin new employment on the 15th. Unit B offers coverage on the first day of the second month. So in this scenario, John will have coverage through the end of August under Unit A, and his new coverage through Unit B will begin on October 1st. John may elect COBRA coverage under Unit A to have coverage during the month of September.
That's right. And guys, remember, he can elect COBRA coverage, and if you're with Unit B and you don't want him to have that gap in coverage, you could pay that 1 month of COBRA coverage for him if you wanted to. You would just need to get him to elect, and then you guys handle the payment arrangement for that. So just keep that in mind. All right, so we know who the employees are and that. What about an eligible dependent?
Okay, an eligible dependent is your spouse, a child under age 26 that is biological, adopted, or a stepchild, a dependent under age 19 for whom the participant or their spouse has legal and physical custody of, or an incapacitated dependent child age 26 or older that meets certain requirements. Chris, would you like to discuss some of our ineligible dependents?
I can. So the ones that we see most often are your spouse, if they're independently eligible for coverage at another unit. If that's the case, then they would need to take single coverage at their employer. The other ones that we see a lot are your ex-spouse or ex-stepchildren, regardless of what the divorce decree may state. They're not eligible for coverage under our plan. So it's very important that we learn about these divorces as soon as possible. I always stress this point every year. If you know you have an employee who's going through a divorce, try to stay on top of that and find out when it's finalized so that you can send that in to us as soon as possible so that we can cancel coverage for the ex-spouse and we're not paying claims that we shouldn't be. We do get a monthly report from the Department of Public Health. The problem with it is it's always a month behind because they're getting a report from the court system. And so we're always canceling coverage a month behind. And so we're paying claims unnecessarily in that case. But it's a good safeguard, but we would still like to get them as soon as possible. So if you could tell your employees if they're going through that process to let us know as soon as possible, that would be great. All right, so let's walk through the process of enrolling dependents in special enrollment.
Okay, outside of open enrollment, there are two scenarios that we would allow a special enrollment. The first is a new dependent, which would be marriage, birth, maybe adoption. In those cases, we allow those dependents to come on the plan if we receive the documentation within 60 days of that event. So the second scenario is loss of other coverage. Say you have an employee and they're on their spouse's insurance. If they are to lose that coverage, your employee and their spouse can come on our plan if they provide that documentation within 60 days of the event.
And those are good examples. And one other one that I wanted to mention, because it's in the news a lot lately, is about the ACA subsidies potentially going away. There's some talk of that. We don't know if it's going to happen or not, but if you have an employee who currently has marketplace coverage and they're getting a subsidy and those subsidies do go away, that would qualify as a qualifying event to join our plan because it's a change in premium. So just keep that in mind. If that does come to bear and you have employees in that situation, that would be a qualifying event to join our plan. They would just need to do so within 60 days. The other thing I like to point out during this time is, Meg mentioned documentation. We need documentation. So if you're adding a child due to a birth or adoption, we need a birth certificate, we need an adoption order, custody order. Please get those documents to us as soon as possible so that we can get those children added. One other thing that comes up is the tag-along rule. How many of you are familiar with the tag-along rule? So this is actually a really good thing that I like to inform you guys about because a lot of people don't know about it, but it allows a dependent who's not necessarily eligible because of the qualifying event to piggyback off of the qualifying event to join the plan. So I've got an example to show you how that works. Let's say you have a husband and wife, and financially it makes sense for them to both have single coverage through their employers. Wife gets pregnant, they got a baby on the way, well now we need family coverage. In that case, let's say the wife has local government coverage. When the baby's born, obviously she can add the baby due to the birth of the child. The husband can also piggyback off of that birth to join our plan. So just make sure you keep that in mind if that scenario happens.
Okay, another thing that comes up often are national support notices. Can you tell us how we handle those?
So these are orders that are issued by a child support agency. In Alabama, it's DHR. They're not a court order. They're not a divorce decree. And when we get those, the child cannot be removed as long as the employee has coverage and the order is still in effect. Even your employees who have declined coverage, if they have enough money in their paycheck to pay for family coverage, then they would have to enroll in family coverage. And so when you get these orders, there's a form that comes with them. There's actually two separate pieces of paper. There's an employer response and a plan administrator response. I always like to stress, you guys fill out the employer response, we fill out the plan administrator response. And on the employer response, there's a financial analysis that you would go through to make sure they have enough money to pay for it. If they don't have enough money to pay for it, then you just send that back to DHR and let them know. You don't even have to send that to us because they're not eligible at that point. But if they do have enough money, then you would send all the documentation to us. We would fill out the plan administrator response and send that in. But please do not fill out the plan administrator response because then we've got to send it back and get it whited out and it's a whole process. So let's just avoid that if we can, please. All right, so we've talked about the enrollment process. Let's talk about canceling coverage. If you've got somebody who's terminated employment, when should they notify us?
Really, we'd like to be notified as soon as possible, but again, no later than 30 days.
And does that also apply if you've got someone who's on leave without pay or retirement?
That's correct, the same 30-day deadline.
All right, what about canceling family coverage?
Okay, you can cancel family coverage due to a qualifying event, which would be divorce, the dependent gains other coverage, a loss of custody, or a Medicare or Medicaid entitlement.
And what process do they need to follow to cancel coverage?
To cancel family coverage, you would use a dependent cancellation form. To cancel your employee's coverage, you would just use a regular cancellation form. And you can fill that cancellation form out and mail and email it to us, or you can use our online cancellation option, which is on your portal.
All right, so the online cancellation is something we've done in the last couple of years and we're really proud of it. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, we have a little demo here to show you how quick and easy it is to use your portal to cancel an employee. So you log into your portal, you click the Cancel Employee Contract option, then you find your employee that you would like to cancel, enter the date, the reason for the cancel, and then click Submit, and we will process it from there. After that, if they're eligible, we'll send COBRA. So Chris, can you tell us how we do that?
I can. So as Meg mentioned, you guys should tell us about the end of employment within 30 days. That's not just our rule, that's a federal law rule under the COBRA regulations. The employer is responsible for notifying the plan within 30 days of the end of employment, the death of the employee, or if you've got an employee who has a reduction in hours that would make them ineligible. So in our case, if you've got someone who goes above 30 to below 30, tell us within 30 days so that we can process the COBRA paperwork timely. One thing that I always mention is if the termination was due to gross misconduct, you need to let us know that because in those scenarios, the employee is not eligible for COBRA. And we've got a box on the online cancellation portal and on our cancellation form to indicate that. But if you don't check that box, then we're going to offer COBRA because we don't know any different. Now, I know I can anticipate it. You guys probably want to know what gross misconduct is. I can't tell you, unfortunately. It's not really a defined term in the federal law, but it's always say you know it when you see it. It usually rises to the level of a felony. And if you find yourself in that situation, I would consult your legal counsel just to make sure you're following the proper protocol in those situations. But just make sure to keep that in mind. So Meg, when we get the cancellation form, how do we process the COBRA from there?
Upon receipt of the cancellation form, if the termination is COBRA qualifying, then we will mail a notice to the employee and their dependents, if applicable, on the plan to offer them COBRA. And if the employee elects COBRA, the form must be completed and returned to us within 60 days.
All right, so all of the things that we just talked about can occur throughout the year, but let's talk about open enrollment because that's a different time period for us.
That's right, and it's coming up. So our open enrollment period is November 1st through November 30th. One thing to note is that November 30th falls on a weekend this year, so we will receive forms through the end of day on December 1st. If anything slips through the cracks, you still have that day to send it to us. And during that time, the eligible members can enroll in health and voluntary coverages, add a dependent or family coverage, and also drop dependent or family coverage.
And don't forget that units can also make changes during open enrollment. It's not just for employees. You guys could change your effective date of hire or effective date of insurance for new hires. You could choose to add or drop retiree coverage, add or drop elected official coverage, or add or drop dental coverage. All those changes can be made during open enrollment, and they would be effective January 1st of the next year. So all the things that we just talked about apply to our medical plan, but let's talk about our Southland voluntary benefits. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about those later, but let's talk about the enrollment rules.
Okay, so Southland is optional coverage that your employees can elect, and they can do that upon initial hire, during open enrollment, or with a qualifying life event. And the types of coverage that we offer through Southland are dental, vision, and cancer.
And can an employee add their family members to Southland?
Yes, family members are eligible for Southland, and they can be added at initial hire, open enrollment, or with a qualifying life event.
All right, so that is our enrollment presentation, but now is a slide where we go over our forms. And I always say this is one of the more important slides in the book. It's also in our administrative guide because it has most of the forms, or it has all of the enrollment forms on there, and it has a reason plus the deadline. So Meg, you want to talk about a few of those?
Yes. All right. So the first two forms, we have an enrollment and a declination. And that is what we need to receive for every new hire within 30 days. Once they're enrolled, if you need to make changes or add a new dependent, you'd use a status change form for the changes and a new dependent form to add the new dependent. And then on the bottom of this slide, you'll see our two cancellation forms that you can use. They're the dependent cancellation form to cancel dependents or family coverage, and then just our regular cancellation form. And I think our next slide has our Southland forms. So we have changed a little bit on our Southland forms this year. You'll see that we have the enrollment form, and then we've combined our change and cancellation form. So you only have two Southland forms to use now, one to enroll and one to make changes or cancel.
That's right. And so all of these forms are available on our website, so keep that in mind. So how would they submit these forms to us?
All right. You can submit them to us through mail, or you can email them to us at enrollments@lghip.org.
All right, so that's our presentation on our active employee enrollment process. But now it's time to talk about retiree coverage, and we have a special guest for you today. We've decided to bring up the retiree expert, Ms. Kimberly Bennett. So let's welcome Ms. Kimberly. All right, so how many of you offer retiree coverage? Okay, that's a good number. So for those of them who do not currently offer it, Kimberly, what do they need to know?
There are two types of retiree coverage: the non-Medicare retiree coverage for those employees under age 65, or the Medicare retiree coverage for those employees that are Medicare eligible. If your unit decides to offer retiree coverage during open enrollment, it is only available to your future retirees.
That's right. So if you make that change during open enrollment to elect to start covering retirees, that would be going forward for anyone who retires after that. So Kimberly, who is responsible for paying the retiree premiums?
So local government will bill the retiree premium amount to the unit, and then your unit will determine what portion of that premium the retiree will pay, and then you'll collect that amount from the retiree.
Yes, and we see various amounts from all units, so that's up to you guys to decide. Kimberly, can you tell us who is eligible for retiree coverage?
So the first requirement is that the retiree must have 10 years of coverage on the plan or be continuously covered since unit joined the plan, and then meet one of the following: a service retirement, which is 25 years of service with a local government unit, service with the state or any municipal and county service, an age requirement, which is age 60 years or older, or a disability retirement, which must be approved by SSA and not RSA.
That's right. No offense to our friends from RSA here. We do not accept RSA retirement, but it's a really, it looks complicated. It's really not, guys. You've got to have 10 years of coverage in the plan and then one of the following. So it's really just a two-part analysis. So the other thing that we like to point out is they need to go from active to retiree status. If you've got someone who is involuntarily terminated and you can send in a cancellation form involuntarily terminated to us, they're not an eligible retiree because we don't know any better. So make sure if you have someone who's in that scenario to check the involuntary termination cancellation because they need to go from active to retiree status.
Okay, so the units that offer Medicare retiree coverage, what do they need to remember about their retirees enrolling in that?
Okay, so the retiree must have enrolled in Medicare Part A and B. It could be effective for their retirement date. They don't have to get Part B right off if they're still full-time. And once they're enrolled in both, they will be automatically enrolled into the UHC Medicare Advantage plan.
All right, so what about the process of enrolling in non-Medicare retiree coverage?
So last year we created a new form that is just for the retirees. It's the retiree enrollment form. You'll complete this form and send it to us 30 or more days prior to their retirement. If your employee retires before age 60 due to years of service, you will also need to complete the years of service form.
Okay. And in the case of retirees returning to work, how will we handle that?
So if you have a retiree who returns to work or becomes an eligible elected official, for those of you who covered elected officials, they would then go back into sort of active employee status and they would need to either enroll or decline. The one caveat is they can decline using their retiree coverage. So let's say they are retired from Unit A, they go to work for Unit B. They could decline coverage with Unit B using their retiree coverage from Unit A. So they need to be aware of that on the front end, because if they decide to cancel their retiree coverage from Unit A and enroll in Unit B as an active employee, they cannot then go back to Unit A. So make sure they're aware of that on the front end. Now, if it's with the same unit, they retire from the unit, then go back to work with the unit, it really doesn't matter. They can enroll in active coverage and then re-retire again with that same unit. That's not an issue, but just make sure you're aware of that. All right, so for the units that do not cover right now retiree coverage, that decision is not set in stone. How can they make the change to cover retirees in the future?
So you can submit the unit change form, during open enrollment, and then it would be effective for any future retirees that retire on January 1st or after.
That's right. And Kimberly actually brought those unit change forms. So if you're interested in that, she has them at her table. And if you have any other questions, we've got her contact information here. Feel free to call or email. She's got a ton of knowledge and is happy to help. So thank you, Kimberly.
All right, so it's time to bring up our next special guest. We're going to bring up Ms. Tara Holloman to talk about our audit program. All right, so we decided, and that was another very appropriate song, by the way. I don't know if you caught that, but we decided to bring Tara up because Tara, I don't know if you guys are like me, but the term auditor kind of has a negative connotation, but we wanted you guys to meet Tara and show you that she's sweet. She's not mean, I promise. So Tara, give us an update on what's going on with the audit program.
Okay, we've audited all of our units, and the leading violations are declinations, enrollments, and cancellation forms.
Okay, so you said the leading violation is declinations. Why do you think that is?
Okay, some units do not realize that our rules require that all full-time employees need to either enroll or decline in the coverage within 30 days of their date of hire. Some units may classify employees differently than we do, so that could cause some confusion, that rule.
That's right. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. You guys may have a different full-time definition, and that's fine, but for insurance purposes, just remember it's 30 hours. So, Tara, what about cancellations? What are you seeing there?
Cancellations are employees that were on the plan eligible. The best way to avoid this issue is to reconcile your bill every month. Cancellation forms have to be sent within 30 days and no later after termination.
All right, and how many of you guys have already been audited? All right, so most of you know the drill, but for those who have not been audited, can you tell them what to expect?
Yes. Okay. A notice is sent to your unit and you're given 10 business days to respond. If you would like to email those documents, you can send us an email requesting a secure link. After that, follow-up questions are sent, and when all of the information has been received and the audit is complete, you'll receive a closing letter.
All right, so one thing I wanted to point out, guys, is the audit program is a very important program to our agency and to our program. It really ensures that we are keeping the integrity of the program. We're only covering those people who should be covered, and we're not covering those who aren't. And so that helps keep the premiums low for everyone. So it's very important that you respond timely to Tara and her group when they send you a request, because if you don't, you could be subject to group termination. And honestly, we don't want to have to walk down that road. I know you guys don't want to walk down that road. It's never a good situation. So please, if you get, when it's your time for audit, please correspond with Tara. And if you're working on things and it may take a little longer, that's fine. Just let her know. Just keep her constantly updated on the status of it.
All right. So now we've told them what to expect, do you have any helpful tips for a successful audit?
Yes. Make sure your unit contact information is up to date. Reconcile your bill every month to ensure the employees you're covering still work with your unit. Reply to emails in a timely manner. Submit enrollment or declination forms with proof of other coverage within 30 days of a new hire. Notify us of terminations as soon as possible and submit any appropriate forms for retirees.
Okay, great. If you guys have any questions about audit, Tara's contact information is here. You can call or send an email. And we saw lots of you raise your hands that you've been through it and you made it. So it's not that bad. Tara's not scary.